The scissors tore through the white wedding gown. Rip. Another cut. Soft lace fell to the floor. Kunle froze at the doorway, eyes wide with shock. "Omowumi, do you even know the worth of that gown?" Before she could answer, the front door burst open. Femi rushed inside, saw the ruined dress, and screamed. "Are you out of your mind?" But Omowumi didn't stop cutting. Hours earlier, the day had begun with hope. Omowumi was known around the neighborhood for two things: her size and her cooking. She was a very big woman, the kind people noticed immediately when she entered a room. Some whispered behind her back. Some laughed openly, others simply stared. But when people tasted her food, their attitude always changed. Her soups were rich and deep with flavor. Her rice dishes carried aromas that filled entire streets. Even people who mocked her body would still come back asking for plates of her meals. Food was the only place where she felt powerful. Inside the kitchen, she wasn't the fat woman. She was a chef. That morning she had been stirring a pot of stew when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but curiosity made her answer. "Hello. Good morning. Am I speaking with Chef Omowumi?" Her hand froze. "Yes, this is she." "My name is Adais from the Africa Cooking Contest selection team." The wooden spoon slipped from her fingers and dropped into the stew. For a second she couldn't breathe. The Africa Cooking Contest was not a small competition. It was one of the biggest cooking contests across the continent. Chefs from many countries competed. Winners became celebrities. Restaurant chains fought to hire them. Television stations invited them. Lives changed overnight. "You were nominated by 3 different restaurants that tasted your meals," the woman continued. "Our judges selected you as one of the contestants for the first stage of the competition." Omowumi leaned against the kitchen counter because her legs suddenly felt weak. You mean me?" "Yes, we need you in Lagos tomorrow morning for the opening round." Tears filled her eyes. For years people had laughed at her body, but her cooking had finally spoken louder than their mockery. "I will come," she whispered quickly. "Good. Prepare your best ideas. This opportunity could take your career very far." When the call ended, Omowumi covered her mouth and cried with joy. She wanted to tell Femi immediately. But he had already gone to work. That didn't stop her excitement. She spent the afternoon preparing carefully. She packed her cooking knives, selected her favorite spices, chose a simple outfit she could travel comfortably in. Her heart felt light the entire day. Tomorrow could change everything. Evening approached. Omowumi dressed up, carried her bag, and walked toward the front door. She grabbed the handle and pulled. The door refused to move. She frowned and tried again, still locked. Confused, she walked to the back door. Locked. She checked the balcony entrance. Locked. Her heartbeat slowly became louder. "Femi!" she called. No answer. She checked every door again. Every single one had been locked from the outside. Her chest tightened. "Femi!" Her voice echoed through the flat. She banged the front door with both hands. Nothing. Her phone buzzed several times. The contest organizers were calling to confirm her movement. She tried explaining the situation, but hours continued passing. The sky outside slowly turned dark. Her bag remained beside the door. Ready, but useless. By the time she realized no one was coming to open the door, the opportunity was already gone. Omowumi slowly sat on the floor. Her shoulders shook quietly. The sound of a key turning in the lock finally broke the silence. The door opened. Femi walked inside casually, as if nothing had happened. Omowumi stood up immediately. Her eyes were swollen from crying. "You locked the doors," she said. Femi dropped his keys on the table and removed his shoes. Omowumi suddenly pushed him hard. He stumbled backward and fell onto the 3-seater couch. "What is wrong with you?" he snapped angrily. Her voice trembled with rage. "Why did you lock the house?" Femi leaned back on the couch slowly. I won't say much, he replied calmly. But for what you did today, I will surprise you. Her eyebrows tightened. What are you talking about? Femi stared at her body with open irritation. When you forget your elephant look, it becomes disrespectful, he said coldly. Omowumi froze. Why will someone this big be talking about food competitions? He continued. Don't you know anything aside from eating? His voice became sharper. You glutton, foodie girl! Omowumi collapsed on the edge of the couch as tears rolled down her cheeks. But Femi continued attacking her. All your mates are married already, he said harshly. But look at you. He gestured toward her body. Obesity has destroyed your body shape. The words pierced deep. Omowumi covered her face as another wave of tears came. But Femi was still not finished. He stood up and laughed bitterly. Even this couch is tired of carrying your heavy body, he mocked. Even me I cannot carry you. You are heavier than a burden. Omowumi cried harder. I can't even introduce you to my family anymore, he continued. My mother and grandmother combined are not as big as you. Her shoulders shook violently, but Femi looked irritated by her tears. Crying will not make you slim, he snapped. Enough of it. He grabbed his phone and started walking toward the bedroom. Tomorrow morning we are going to the gym, he said firmly. By force. Omowumi slowly lifted her head. Her eyes widened. Femi didn't even look back. Prepare yourself, he added coldly, before disappearing into the room. Silence returned to the living room. Omowumi remained seated there, breathing heavily, surrounded by the painful echoes of his words. The next morning arrived faster than Omowumi wished. She barely slept. Femi was already awake when the sun began to rise. He stood beside the bed, dressed in sportswear, his arms folded. Get up, he said flatly. Omowumi slowly opened her eyes. Her body felt heavy, but not just from weight. The words he had thrown at her the night before still echoed in her mind. You said we are going to the gym, he continued impatiently. Or have you forgotten already? She sat up quietly. There was no excitement in her movement, only a silent determination not to argue. Minutes later they were outside. The gym building stood 2 streets away from their apartment. Loud music thumped through the walls even before they entered. Inside, the air smelled of sweat, iron, and determination. Men lifted heavy weights. Women ran on treadmills. Bodies moved everywhere. The moment Omowumi stepped inside, several heads turned. Some people stared for a second too long. She noticed. Of course she noticed. But she kept walking. Femi pointed toward the treadmill section. Start there. Omowumi stepped onto the machine slowly. The trainer adjusted the speed. At first the movement felt simple, but after 2 minutes her breathing became heavier. After 5 minutes, sweat began dripping down her neck. Her legs burned. Faster, Femi said from behind her. The trainer increased the speed slightly. Omowumi gripped the rails tightly. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. Her body shook under the effort, but she refused to stop. Minutes later she stepped down and moved to another station. Jump ropes slapped against the floor. Weights clanged loudly. Her arms trembled as she lifted small dumbbells. The trainer demonstrated a squat. Omowumi followed. Down. Up. Down again. Her thighs screamed with pain, but something inside her pushed forward. Each movement became stronger, each breath became louder, sweat soaked through her shirt. The gym echoed with the sound of effort. On the 3rd day, the routine had already become familiar. Morning, warm-up, treadmill, weights, squats, push movements. Omowumi arrived early that day, but when she looked around, Femi was nowhere to be seen. She waited near the treadmill for several minutes. Still nothing. Finally, she shrugged and began her routine alone. She stepped onto the treadmill and started running slowly. Her breathing settled into a rhythm. Step, step, step. After a while, she noticed someone standing nearby. He was impossible to ignore. Tall, very tall. His head almost reached the top of the equipment rack behind him. His shoulders were wide, his arms thick with muscle, his skin dark and smooth like polished wood. He watched her run for a moment, then smiled slightly. "You're improving," he said. Omowumi slowed the treadmill and stepped down. "Thank you," she replied politely. Up close the man looked even taller. At least 6 feet 6 inches, maybe more. "What's your name?" he asked. "Omowumi." He nodded approvingly. "I'm Tman." She raised an eyebrow. "Tman?" He chuckled. "Tallest man. That's what everyone calls me here." Omowumi couldn't help smiling a little. "Well, the name makes sense." They laughed lightly. Tman picked up a heavy barbell from the rack and lifted it effortlessly. The metal plates clanged softly as he placed it back. "You're new here," he said. "Yes, just started." "You're doing well for a beginner," he added. "Most people give up after the first day." Omowumi wiped sweat from her forehead. "Giving up isn't an option." Tman studied her face for a moment. Something about her determination impressed him. "Good," he said simply. After that morning they began greeting each other whenever they met. Sometimes they exchanged a few words between workouts, sometimes just a nod. But Femi stopped coming. Day after day, Omowumi arrived at the gym alone. She didn't ask questions. She simply focused on her training. That evening she returned home exhausted but strangely proud. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. Femi appeared from the sitting room immediately. His face wore an unusual smile. "Welcome back," he said warmly. Omowumi looked surprised by his sudden friendliness. "You're back early," she replied cautiously. Femi walked closer. "I have a surprise for you." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "What kind of surprise?" Femi pointed toward the bedroom. "Go to your room and check your wardrobe." Omowumi frowned in confusion. "What for?" "Just go," he insisted with a grin. "Then come back. I have another surprise waiting here." His excitement felt strange, but curiosity made her walk toward the bedroom. The door creaked softly as she pushed it open. She stepped inside and walked toward the wardrobe. Her hand reached for the handle. She opened it slowly. Then she froze. Her eyes widened. Everything inside had changed. Her clothes were gone. All the dresses she usually wore, the loose gowns, the large blouses, the comfortable oversized fabrics. Gone. In their place hung dozens of new clothes. But something was wrong. They were small, very small, slim dresses, tight shirts, tiny waistlines. Every single one looked several sizes smaller than her body. Omowumi stared in disbelief. Her hands touched one of the dresses. The fabric barely looked wide enough for her arm. This wasn't a surprise. This was something else. Her chest tightened. Slowly she closed the wardrobe door. Then she turned and walked back toward the sitting room. Femi was waiting proudly. "So?" he asked eagerly. "Did you see them?" Omowumi's face was calm, but her eyes were cold. "Yes," she said quietly. Femi smiled wider. "Good." Then he reached behind the couch and lifted something into view. It was a wedding gown. Bright white. Beautiful. But painfully small. The waist was narrow, the shoulders tight. The entire dress clearly meant for someone much slimmer. Femi held it up proudly like a trophy. "I bought this for our wedding," he announced. Femi lowered the small wedding gown slowly, admiring it like a prize he had worked hard to get. Omowumi stood silently in front of him. Her face revealed nothing. "You saw the clothes in the wardrobe, right?" Femi asked proudly. "Yes," she replied. "They are your new clothes," he continued. "By the time you start wearing them every day, your body will have no choice but to adjust." Omowumi stared at him, confused by the strange logic. But Femi wasn't done. "Oh, I almost forgot the real surprise," he added. He walked toward the small storage room beside the kitchen. Omowumi followed with her eyes. Femi opened the door briefly, then closed it again and locked it with a key. He held up the key between his fingers. "The food store is now closed," he said casually. Omowumi blinked. "What?" Femi leaned against the wall like a man explaining a brilliant idea. "All the rice, beans, gari, yam, and cooking ingredients inside that store are now off-limits." Omowumi felt her chest tighten. "You're joking." "I'm not." He walked to the dining table and placed a small basket on it. Inside were apples, bananas, and a few packets of crackers. "You can eat fruits and snacks every day," he said calmly. "That's more than enough for someone like you." Omowumi's eyes widened slowly. "You locked our food?" "Yes." "Femi, you need discipline," he interrupted. "This is for your own good." Her fingers trembled slightly. "I'm not a child." "And I'm not dating a food warehouse," he snapped. "This is the only way you'll learn control." The room fell into heavy silence. Omowumi looked toward the locked storage door again. Everything she loved cooking, everything she used to create magic in the kitchen, locked away, like a criminal punishment. Femi tossed the key lightly in the air and caught it. "Tomorrow morning, gym again," he said before walking away toward the bedroom. Omowumi stood there for a long time, staring at the fruit basket. The following morning, the gym felt different. Omowumi moved slower than usual. Her stomach growled quietly as she stepped onto the treadmill. Fruits and snacks were not enough for someone doing heavy workouts. Still, she pushed through, step after step, sweat forming across her forehead. Halfway through her run, she noticed Tman watching again from the weight rack. But this time he wasn't just observing, he was smiling, or rather, trying not to laugh. Omowumi slowed the treadmill and stepped down. "You find something funny?" she asked. Tman scratched the back of his head. "Maybe a little." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "What exactly is funny?" Tman walked closer, his tall frame casting a shadow beside her. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." He pointed gently at the tight shirt she was wearing. "Why do you prefer clothes that are trying to strangle you?" Omowumi looked down at the shirt. The fabric stretched tightly across her stomach and arms. "These clothes shrink you to a size that isn't yours," Tman continued softly. His voice wasn't mocking. It sounded concerned. "Have you suddenly become a slim girl overnight?" he asked lightly. "Or are you living inside an imaginary reality?" Omowumi sighed. "It's a long story," she said quietly. "Then tell it." "I'd rather not." Tman folded his arms. "No, this is not good for you." Omowumi looked at him carefully. For the first time she noticed there was no judgment in his eyes, only curiosity and concern. She hesitated, then slowly sat on one of the gym benches. Tman sat beside her, and for the first time Omowumi began talking. She told him about Femi, about the insults, about the locked doors that made her miss the cooking contest, about the forced gym routine, about the wardrobe full of clothes that didn't fit her body, about the food store that was now locked. Her voice shook several times as she spoke, but she didn't stop. When she finished, the silence between them lasted a few seconds. Tman leaned forward slowly. "Wow," he muttered. Omowumi looked down at her hands. "I know I'm big," she said quietly, "but I didn't think it made me this unacceptable." Tman turned toward her immediately. "Hey!" She looked up. "Don't ever say that again." His voice was firm. "You hear me?" Omowumi blinked in surprise. Tman continued. "Your body is not a crime. Your size is not a mistake." He pointed toward the gym floor. "Half the people in this place are here because they hate their bodies. But you—" He shook his head slightly. "You are here because someone made you feel like you should hate yourself." Omowumi felt something shift inside her chest. "You cook, right?" he asked. Yes. And people love your food? Yes. Then that means you already have something many people don't. What? Purpose. Omowumi stared at him quietly. Taman stood up and offered his hand. Come on, he said. Where? Back to training. If you want to work out, do it because you choose to, not because someone is bullying you. Omowumi slowly took his hand, and for the first time since the gym journey started, she smiled during her workout. Months passed. Something had changed in Omowumi's life. Her gym sessions became consistent. Her confidence slowly returned, and her friendship with Taman grew stronger every day. They talked more, laughed more, encouraged each other. One Saturday morning, after a long workout session, Taman suddenly said something unexpected. Let's go somewhere. Where? You'll see. Curiosity made her follow him. 30 minutes later they arrived at a boutique. Bright lights, beautiful dresses hanging neatly on racks. Omowumi looked confused. Taman, relax, he said with a grin. He walked between the racks, selecting dresses one by one. Elegant gowns, comfortable casual outfits, stylish evening wear. Then he handed them to the shop assistant. Her size, he said confidently. The assistant nodded and guided Omowumi toward the fitting room. Minutes later she stepped out wearing the first dress. It fit perfectly. Not tight, not suffocating. Just right. Taman's face lit up immediately. There you go, he said excitedly. Omowumi looked at herself in the mirror. For the first time in months, she saw beauty instead of shame. They continued trying different outfits, laughing, taking pictures, joking about colors and styles. The day passed quickly. By evening they left the boutique carrying several shopping bags. But the fun didn't end there. They went to a restaurant, shared meals, talked about dreams, talked about life. Night slowly arrived and city lights filled the streets. As they walked outside, Omowumi looked at Taman with gratitude. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For reminding me that I'm still worth something. Taman smiled. You always were. Months after the day Taman took her shopping, something inside Omowumi had completely changed. Confidence now lived in her posture. Her laughter returned. And the woman who once cried silently on the couch now walked like someone who had rediscovered her worth. But inside the small apartment she still shared with Femi, the tension had become impossible to hide. That afternoon, the sound of scissors slicing through fabric echoed through the living room again. Rip. Another cut. White lace dropped to the floor. Omowumi's hands moved calmly, almost carefully, as she cut through the small wedding gown Femi had once presented proudly. Each piece of fabric fell like a quiet statement. Kunle stepped through the front door carrying a small bag and froze immediately. His eyes widened in disbelief. Omowumi! She didn't stop. Rip. Another long tear split across the delicate fabric. Kunle rushed forward. Do you even know the worth of that gown you are putting into pieces? Omowumi looked at the dress in her hands. Her voice was calm. Yes. She cut another piece. The scissors snapped sharply. Kunle ran his hand over his head in shock. That dress is expensive. Femi nearly bragged about it to everyone. Omowumi dropped another piece of lace to the floor. Her voice carried quiet strength. A dress that suffocates the bride is not expensive. Kunle stared at her, confused, concerned. Before he could speak again, Omowumi folded the remaining piece of fabric and placed the scissors on the table. Some things are more valuable than clothes, she said softly. Across town that same evening, Femi sat with 3 of his friends at a small bar. Music played loudly around them while glasses clinked on tables. But Femi wasn't enjoying the evening. He leaned forward, frustration written across his face. Something is wrong with Omowumi, he said. His friend Sola raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Femi sighed. She has been acting differently at home. Another friend leaned in. Differently how? She barely talks to me anymore, Femi replied, and she goes out a lot. Gym, shopping, meeting people. His friends exchanged quick looks. One of them chuckled. My guy. Are you sure another man is not involved? Femi frowned. I'm starting to think so. The table went quiet for a moment. Then Sola snapped his fingers. You're making a big mistake. Femi looked confused. What mistake? You're letting her slip away, Sola replied. Another friend nodded. If she thinks you're not serious about her, she'll move on. Femi rubbed his chin thoughtfully. So what should I do? The answer came quickly. Propose. Femi blinked. Propose? Yes, Sola insisted. Big proposal, public one. Another friend added excitedly. Women love that kind of thing. Show her you're ready to marry her. And promise her wedding plans immediately, the third friend said. If you don't act fast, someone else will. Femi leaned back slowly, considering the idea. Then a confident smile spread across his face. You're right, he said. I'll propose. 2 weeks later, the grand event centre was filled with people. Bright lights glowed from chandeliers. Music played softly in the background. Guests dressed elegantly filled the hall. Many of them had come because they heard something special was going to happen that night. Omowumi stood near the centre of the hall, looking around curiously. She didn't know why Femi insisted she attend this event. Suddenly the music stopped, the lights dimmed slightly, and Femi walked toward her holding a microphone. The room grew quiet. Guests lifted their phones immediately, recording, watching, waiting. Femi stopped directly in front of Omowumi. Then he slowly dropped to one knee. Gasps filled the hall. He opened a small box. Inside sat a sparkling ring. Omowumi, he said loudly, his voice echoing through the hall. You have been in my life for a long time. Camera flashes exploded around them. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. More phones lifted. More cameras flashed. Will you marry me? For a moment the entire hall held its breath. All eyes turned toward Omowumi. But instead of excitement, her face remained calm. She looked at the ring. Then she looked at Femi, slowly. She stepped back. Whispers spread through the crowd. Omowumi's voice rose clearly across the silent hall. I refuse to marry a man who pressures me. The audience gasped. Camera flashes exploded even faster. Femi's confident smile disappeared. I would have said yes, Omowumi continued, if only you could admit what you did wrong. The silence in the hall became heavy. I could have been yours, she added quietly, if only you could love me unconditionally. Femi stood frozen, humiliated, speechless. Suddenly another figure walked calmly toward the stage area, tall, broad shoulders, dark skin glowing under the lights. Tman. The crowd murmured loudly as he stepped beside Omowumi. He looked directly at Femi. Love requires understanding, Timan said calmly. His deep voice carried across the hall. But you lack that. The words struck like thunder. Then Timan turned toward Omowumi. His hand gently held hers. And now, he added, she is mine. The room erupted. Phones raised everywhere. Camera flashes exploded like fireworks. And then Omowumi leaned forward. She kissed Timan. The crowd shouted in shock and excitement. All cameras now focused on them. Femi stood frozen like a statue, his face pale, his pride shattered. Without another word, he turned and walked away slowly. His steps were heavy, cold. The next morning, the internet exploded. Trending news headlines spread across social media. Videos of the proposal rejection flooded every platform. Millions of people watched the dramatic moment. The comments were brutal. By noon, Femi's phone buzzed repeatedly. One notification popped onto his screen. Rising chef star Omowumi Garnet breaks up with boyfriend. New romance with mysterious tall man T-Man shocks fans. Femi stared at the headline. Then he opened a bottle of liquor. One drink turned into two. Two turned into many. By night he was completely drunk. But the internet didn't stop. Days later, another headline appeared. Chef Omowumi marries Taman in trending wedding ceremony. The wedding photos were everywhere. Omowumi smiled brightly in a gown made perfectly for her body. Guests cheered, music played, joy filled every image. And beside her stood Taman, proud and supportive. The story behind their love spread across the internet like wildfire. People celebrated her courage. They praised her dignity. They admired her decision. Meanwhile, Femi became a laughingstock online. Memes, mocking comments, endless jokes. But for Omowumi, none of that mattered anymore. As she stood beside Timan on her wedding day, surrounded by laughter and love, one truth filled her heart. This was the happiest day of her life. If you enjoyed this powerful story, make sure you like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more unforgettable stories like this.